Should you be house hacking? What is house hacking? And how can you do it? In this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about why house hacking is one of the most important things you can do to build real wealth in your life. And especially if you're a young man underneath the age of 30, you should absolutely be doing this and how you can do it with very little money out of your pocket. So what is house hacking? This is something that a lot of people speak about nowadays. You hear it a lot on, podcasts like Bigger Pockets and all over YouTube, but essentially house hacking is when you buy a property that's under 4 units using an FHA loan or an owner occupied note to be able to purchase a property with very little money out of your pocket, usually about 3.5% to 5% down, you can purchase a property and say that you're going to live in it. And what you can do is you can rent out the other units if it's a multifamily property. So, for example, if I buy a duplex in my area and I say to the bank, hey, I'm going to go live in this property in unit number one, right? I can purchase that with 5% down, 3.5% down if I'm using a FHA loan, and I can go and acquire the property and I can go move into unit number one and then rent out the second one, essentially negating a large portion of that mortgage that I would have, and in some cases allowing me to live for free, right? So why is this important, right? Well, because if you think about it, we spend so much money on rent and mortgages throughout our entire life. It's one of our biggest expenses outside of taxes, is just cost of living, right? And especially if you live in a big city, Nashville, St. Louis, New York, Chicago, Miami, any of these big cities, your cost of living is going to be significant, right? You're going to be spending at least 1,000, probably multiple thousands of dollars a month in rent just for a one-bedroom apartment. Sometimes it's that much even for a studio apartment. And that money just goes into the black hole, basically, right? You don't ever get any kind of value from that unless you own your house. And in that case, you're probably not going to get much out of that, at least for, after the first 10 years, because the first 10 years or so, most of those payments that you're making towards your mortgage are just going towards interest most of the time. So my point is, one of the best things you can do is find a property in your area that is a multifamily property that you can acquire for a small amount of money down, which again could be 3.5% if you're using an FHA loan, or it can be 5% if you're buying it with a conventional loan with owner occupied financing. Find one of those. What I like to do is I like to go on Zillow and I'll just type in multifamily properties within 30 miles of where I live, right? And I'll also usually put on like a price filter on there to prevent things from getting too wild, right? So I'll look at, properties that are 4 units and under within 30 miles of where I live, right? And then you can get a big list of those properties, and then you can reach out to those actual sellers, the seller's agent, which is almost always on Zillow, contact them and ask them, what they're willing to sell this for, right? And you kind of just negotiate with them, see if you can't get them to drop the price, right? And then once you find a deal, and again, we can make a whole nother video about finding deals. That's a separate thing. But once you find a property that you think is going to work, then you can actually close on that property using that conventional financing or an FHA loan, like I said, to be able to acquire that using owner occupied financing, which is a very small amount of money down, right? So you're not having to spend much money out of pocket, right? If I buy a $100,000 duplex, like I did about a year and a half ago, then I can go and put down as little as $3,500 at closing, right? You're probably going to have other costs as well with closing costs and, maybe some other things that pop in as well. But, all in, you're probably not going to spend more than, five, six, maybe $7,000 at the closing table, which to acquire a $100,000 asset in this example is a pretty dang good deal, right? And then you can go and live in that unit. You only have to do it for a year. Keep that in mind. You can go live in that unit and essentially live rent free because the tenant on the other side is going to pay you, the owner, and then you just take that payment and use that payment for the mortgage, right? So let's say you buy, we'll use this same $100,000 property example, right? You get a tenant that's going to pay you, $1,000 a month, right? Let's say it's a two-bedroom or a three-bedroom apartment. They pay you $1,000 a month, and your total mortgage is $800 a month, and that includes PITI, that's taxes, insurance, principal, and interest. and that your entire payment for that is $800. So you're getting paid $1,000, but your whole payment that's going to the bank is 800, right? So you live for free essentially, and you get paid to live $200 a month, right? That's the spread that you're getting there. And then after that year, again, you only have to be there for 12 months. You can either continue to stay there and live for free and get paid to live there, or you can move out and go buy another property using the exact same type of financing. And you can do this over and over and over again. I believe you can only do this about 10 times. But that said, if you were to acquire a duplex every single year for the next 10 years using this type of financing, you can acquire 20 units, right? If you're doing a fourplex, buying a small 4-unit apartment building, you can do this exact same thing. You'd have 40 units by the end of those 10 years, right? With very little money out of pocket. You'd be getting paid to do this the entire time, and you'd be able to build up a very solid real estate portfolio at a fairly young age. It doesn't matter how old you are, you could do this whenever, but especially if you're able to do this when you're, 20, 25 years old, you can get so far ahead of your peers by doing something like this. And by the time you come out the other end and you're 35 or 40, you can have a nice little portfolio that's paying you multiple thousands of dollars a month, potentially even $100,000 a year, completely passive, right? By you being able to do this. To give you guys a little bit of context, again, I have 6 properties. All of those are investment properties, though. So I've never done house hacking particularly. I've got a lot of friends that have, and this is something that's been on my list for a long time on something that I'm actively looking for. I'm just looking for the right property to do this with. But that said, if you're able to do something like this every single year and just go from property to property to property and just hold all of them long term, and as soon as you move out, just go get another tenant who's going to live in your unit and just pay you all that much more, right? So to go back to the previous example, if we move out of that duplex after 1 year, again, you can't do that for less than a year. You have to stay there at least 12 months. I believe that's regulated by law. If you do it less than that, I think you can get in trouble for, mortgage fraud and other stuff like that. So you obviously do not want to do that. Again, this is not financial advice, just to be clear. But let's say you use that example. So you live there for a year. It's $100,000 duplex. You have one tenant on the other side that's paying you $1,000 a month, and your total mortgage is $800, right? You live there for a year, and then after that year goes up, then you move out and you get another tenant to pay you $1,000 a month in that unit that you were just living in. Is this making sense? Right? So now you have $2,000 a month in rent with an $800 payment. Your payment does not change, right? So now you have $2,000 a month with $800 payment. Now you're making $1,200 a month in net free income, completely passive income, by simply buying a property using owner occupied financing, living there for a short period of time, and then moving out and doing it again. And again, if you did this for 10 years, acquiring those types of properties, I mean, you'd be making so much money, it'd be crazy, right? So, and the entire time you're doing that, you can still work your job, you can still be building a business, you can still be doing all the things that you're currently doing, but you're just moving every single year because you're buying these properties and you're just living in them for a year. And then after that, you move out and then you have somebody come in and pay you rent for that, right? This is a fantastic way to build wealth in real estate, and it's really not that complicated. Again, you have to find good properties that make sense, make sure the numbers make sense. And again, we can make another video on that soon. Find good properties that will fit this scenario, move into them, buy them with owner occupied financing, find a good bank locally that can help you close on that. That's very simple, very easy to do, right? And then once you do that, find tenants, which again can be a whole separate video. There's videos for all this different kind of stuff. Get tenants to go in there. What I like to do is use Section 8, and we can talk about that again as well. But Section 8 tenants typically pay more than private pay tenants, just like market rent, regular Joe people down the street. So you can usually get more rent out of those types of tenants. And then live there for a year, then move out, fill it up with full capacity, and rinse and repeat. You can do this so many times, guys. And it's one of the most slept on ways to build wealth in real estate. It's something I absolutely plan on doing. I'm just trying to look for the right deal to make sure I'm able to do it. And it doesn't really cost that much money out of pocket to do something like this. Again, if you're buying a property for 3.5% down, that's $3,500 a month, or $3,500 is a down payment for a $100,000 property. Let's say, okay, Brendan, there's no $100,000 properties nearby. It's, you know, 200,000, whatever it might be. That's $7,000. That's not that much money coming out of your pocket, right? If it's a $7,000 down payment, you're probably paying, $10,000 at the closing table to acquire a $200,000 asset. And it's the exact same thing. It keeps on going, right? So if you're able to do this, and also, in some cases, by the way, guys, if you're a veteran, you can also get a VA loan and you don't have to pay anything out of pocket. You can acquire the place with zero down payment if you have a VA loan, which is definitely something you should keep in mind if you served our country. And that's a great way to get your feet wet when it comes to real estate and also start acquiring properties with, very little money out of pocket. And it's something I highly suggest for anyone who might be listening to this, but especially for some of the younger guys on how they can really build a head start and get started, financially with becoming an investor in real estate because it's something you can do. It's not that complicated. If you're in college, you could be doing this the entire time you're in college and graduate college with, 15 units or so. This is absolutely doable. So guys, I highly recommend you look into this. Highly recommend that you start house hacking. Again, we can make more details on this soon on, the exact specifics on how we can actually make this work. But it's something that I absolutely plan on doing. It's something that I know a lot of people have seen massive success with, and it's something that you can also do for the rest of your life, right? It doesn't really cost much to hop from place to place to place as you build your, real estate empire, right? And it's definitely something that, a lot of the younger guys can do that might be listening to this channel. So anyway, guys, I hope this video finds you well. Hope this makes sense. Drop a comment if you have any questions or if you want me to go over anything, with more specificity. I'm happy to do additional videos going over this, but this is just a strategy that I wanted to share with you guys, and something that I wish I would have known when I was younger as well, so that I could have, been even farther along than where I am right now by house hacking. So anyway, hope you guys have a great day. Hope this helps you guys out. Peace.